We going live.
Notification. All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to this special edition of NASCAR by the Numbers. We've kind of been a little bit on a hiatus as of late, but we're back. Probably the last NASCAR by the Numbers of the season, but we'll definitely be back next year. So, the NASCAR season is behind us. We've crowned our champion, Kyle Busch, two-time champion. If you really want to get technical, four-time champion because he's got the two regular season titles.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, what's up, Home 34? So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at some select drivers who didn't make the playoffs this season, and we're going to evaluate them, and we're going to basically talk about what they failed, what they did wrong to what basically made them miss the playoffs, and then what they had to do in 2020 to basically get in to the 16-man shot at the championship.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready to talk about this.
Let's do it.
So we've got a list of about 10, 11 drivers, maybe, I think. Yeah, 9. So for us to not take all night, we'll go ahead and get started with them. So the first guy I've got written down, it's a guy that we don't know if he's going to be back in Cup next year, but until we know that, you got to cover him. Even though, from what I'm understanding, all signs are pointing to Xfinity. Will be Daniel Suarez. So everybody knows Suarez has had 3 years in some of the best equipment in the NASCAR garage, is yet to find victory lane, is yet to make the playoffs. This year has gotten close as he has. Let me check. He was the first guy outside of the playoffs. I really don't know if that carries weight for people, but that happened. He didn't have any wins again this year, 4 top 5s, 11 top 10s, if I'm reading the right stats correctly. Not really. It's kind of a typical Suarez year. He had some moments where he looked like he was learning, and then he still had more moments where it's like, when is this guy going to take the next step? Went into Indianapolis, the season finale, with a chance. Completely threw that away by making contact with the wall early. Pretty much ruined his chances there. So that has kind of summed up his season. Again, don't expect him back in Cup, but if he is back in Cup next year, have no clue where, assuming he's probably going to not be in the most top-tier ride. He's going to have to develop some level of consistency, maybe sneak out a win, playing some strategy. That's really what Daniel's going to have to do. He hasn't got over the hump of winning even really competitive equipment, so I'm not really sure how that's going to suit him if he's in a car that isn't that competitive.
Yeah, so basically, Suarez, for the most part, throughout the first half of the season, was comfortably really in the playoffs. I mean, he was like 13th in the standings for most of the first half of the season. In my opinion, what really killed him is his last place finish at Daytona. He finished 40th at Daytona. Then after that, he just kind of like Joey Logano with the encumbered win in 2017. He just could never recover from that. Like, I'm looking at his standings.
And looking at that, I'm glad you noticed that out, because that's what I'm looking at, his finishes. And honestly, his finishes don't really look terrible. It's just he never really shined. He started out the year kind of rough. Then he had some decent top 10 runs. Then he was running top 15 for a while. Then he had that 40th. Well, he had Chicago where he finished 24th. Then he had that 40th place finish at Daytona like you're talking about. And then he had a couple of the next few races where he needed to gain a lot of points. He really didn't. And then had a decent – I think he had 4 races where he finished 11th or better. And then it was just up and down. The playoffs, he ran terrible. So it's based on if he would have made it, he wouldn't have made it far. Very rocky season.
Yeah, stats, like you said. Average finish is 16.4. He led 166 laps, which I think is the second or third most out of the SHR camp. So, in my opinion, I don't think it was just Suarez in general. I think it's just the entire team, really. I mean, even like Billy Scott, he didn't really do anything to really gamble when it came to, like, okay, trying to make the playoffs. He didn't really do anything to try to, like, okay, let's push it. They kind of like, kind of did what Kurt Busch did and this team did at the Roval when they need to make it. They didn't gamble. They kind of just like, okay, we're just going to do what we got. We're going to stick with what we got. So I've heard this. I've heard this a lot. In my opinion, we obviously know Cole Custer is going to be in the 41 next year, and we'll get to him later. And actually, I'll save it for later when we get to Cole Custer. Have they announced a crew chief yet for the 41?
I don't think they've announced anything yet. To me, I can't remember who Cole Custer's crew chief is, but to me, that would be the logical move. I always like keeping drivers with people they've worked with.
Mike Shipley was his crew chief last year.
So I think people have talked that it was probably going to be Shipley. Obviously, I don't think that's been announced yet, but to me, that would be the best logical choice.
All right, so yeah, like if Swartz, in my opinion, if Swartz wants to make it to the playoffs next year, he's got to. Here's the thing, Swartz is in an interesting position where, yeah, he has really underperformed in his equipment, but he's never really had time to develop. I mean, in his rookie season, it's been well documented. You know, he was supposed to defend his title. Gets thrusted in when Carl Edwards, up and leaves. He has like 2 or 3 crew chief changes that season. 2018. Obviously, 2018, he has a sophomore slump, and he has like another 2 or 3 crew chief changes, and they change the entire team. Then he gets booted from Gibbs, and he goes to SHR. So SHR was like his first season where he actually had, the time to actually have the entire team, to build that chemistry and to actually develop as a driver. And then they kick him to the curb. So I don't even know if Swartz is really ever going to develop as a driver, or even really a playoff contender, if he's just going to have to keep changing scenery every season.
I mean, I totally understand that. And people know I've been hard on Suarez. I'm going to continue to be hard on Suarez at some point because, people want him to remain in one of the most competitive rides in the sport, but he hadn't backed it up. Now, there is something to not being able to develop and not being able to actually grow into a ride. The problem is we're seeing guys in similar situations start to thrive. William Byron is already starting to compete for wins. He hasn't won yet, but he's competing. He's competed a lot more than Daniel Suarez has. And the 24 is not a better car. And yes, William Byron, he did get a second year with the same. Actually, no, he changed crew chiefs. Now it happened to be arguably the greatest crew chief of all time he's getting. But he changed crew chiefs. I don't know who else has changed personnel on that team. But just like Suarez, he was in the same car for back-to-back years. But William Byron has already started elevating and stepping up in lesser equipment. Alex Bowman, now I think he's kept the same crew chief, but even Alex Bowman had a race, started competing. Those are the things where it makes Suarez look a little rough. But again, I'm fully expecting him to be in Xfinity. There's a lot of rumors of him going to RCR. That could be a great car for him to really prove. That will answer the question, is it the driver or is it, the people around him or whatever the answer is? Because if you get Tyler Reddick's cars and you can't win races or at least compete for wins, that answers your question.
All right, so I think we're going to talk about Daniel Suarez. And like we said, he finished basically, we'll say best of the rest. He finished 17th in the standings, 846 points. He got a pole, so, I mean, if he isn't Cup next year, he'll be in the Clash at least, so.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's move on to our next driver we're going to talk about.
All right, so my next guy I've got on the list is a guy making a positive change, and that is Chris Buescher. Buescher moving back to Roush Fenway Racing, driving the number 17. I think it's a really, really good move for Chris. I think it's a really, really good move for Roush. Now, Roush Fenway, who knows if they'll ever be back to where they were. I remember their days of dominance for a good 3, 4, 5 year span. They were winning everything. Oh, yeah. I used to despise Roush Fenway Racing. That's how good they were. And I remember when NASCAR let Jack Roush get away with having 5 cars instead of 4 because he already had sponsor. I remember all that happening. And they've really fallen off the map. But Ryan Newman has done really, really well. Me and you talked a bunch about how we were impressed with Ryan Newman. I think Chris Buescher, obviously different personality than Ryan Newman, but Chris Buescher gives off the vibe that he's a really hard-fighting race car driver. He's an underrated guy that even a guy I haven't really learned to appreciate. I mean, people forget he's an Xfinity Series champion, and he won it the hard way. I believe that was before the playoffs. So it was a full season championship.
It was.
Buescher drove his tail, and he was an underrated guy because people were focused on guys like Chase Elliott at the time. He went out and flat out earned a championship that people did not expect, people don't remember. So Chris Buescher knows how to get the job done, and I think this year we're going to see him elevate. I can't blame a guy from JTG for missing the playoffs. JTG, I think, has only made the playoffs once, and that's when A.J. Allmendinger won a race. That's the only reason they've ever made a playoff. So, JTG, while I have a lot of respect for that team and they're growing, they're just not a playoff team. They're front row. They're the Chevrolet version of front row motorsports. And there's nothing wrong with that. You got to have those teams. But for him to step up and to make the playoffs, he's got to follow in the footsteps of Ryan Newman. That equipment's not necessarily winning equipment, though. I think he's a good enough plate driver, which he's always running up front the plate tracks. I think he could steal a plate win sometime next year. Even though they don't run plates, I'll still say plate tracks. And other than that, he's going to have consistency, which I think he can do. He's proven to have consistency with JTG. When you look at his stats, he only had 4 top 10s this year, but he had a 17.8 average finish. That was one position behind Daniel Suarez, who was in a Stewart-Haas car. So just keep that in mind moving forward. He's going to have to do the Ryan Newman method. Consistency, and do not tear up race cars.
Interesting thing about Chris Buescher, I'm going to read off his stats. Like 4 top 10s, no top 5, 17.8 average finish. He only has 7 finishes at the entire season outside the top 20. And I think there's like a stat where he holds the longest streak for a JTG Doherty driver to finish inside the top 20. I think it's like 16 or 17 races. So Buescher's proven that he can pull off. Chris Buescher can have consistency. Like we've seen it this season. I think he finished 20th in the standings. He finished ahead of Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Matt DiBenedetto, Austin Dillon. He's finished ahead of these drivers in the standings. So what I think Buescher needs to do is just keep doing what he did at JTG Doherty, but take advantage of the Roush equipment. Like if he does, exactly. He's running like 17th, 18th in JTG Doherty equipment. Move over to Roush, which is an upgrade. It's not a huge upgrade, but it's like an upgrade north. He's going to be, in my opinion, he's going to be a fringe playoff contender.
It's a move from him being a 19th to 23rd place car to a 13th to 18th place car. And if he can get those extra 4 or 5 spots a week, he's going to be in the playoffs. It just as simple as it is. If he can make up those 4 or 5 spots a week that he just didn't have the equipment for, he will be in the playoffs. Now, I'm not calling that yet because I wait for my playoff predictions down the road. I have to really look at the entire field and who I think is going to be in and who's going to be out. But the 17 will make noise next year with Chris Buescher.
I agree. Yeah, he finished 20th in the standings last year. Only led 13 laps, which JTD isn't really known for leading laps. Yeah, 20th in the standings. He finished 16th. Yeah, his last finish outside the top 20 was Dover, and that was 36. Only 4 DNFs on the season, too. So, like I said, Buescher just has to do what he's been doing his entire career. Just take advantage of the improved equipment.
Oh, yeah. So, moving on to our next guy, very controversial guy that people always try to give grief to. But at the end of the day, he's going to be in this ride maybe his entire career. And that is none other than the driver of the iconic 3 car, Austin Dillon. Looking at what Austin did in 2019, no wins, no top 5, 6 top 10s, average finish of 19.5. So keep that in mind. Chris Buescher had a better average finish than Austin Dillon by almost, pretty much by a spot and a half, almost 2 spots per race or for the entire season. Yeah. Austin is it's a hard explanation. RCR has not been great since Kevin Harvick left. I don't know if it's lack of funding. I don't understand it. I don't know if they're playing with another budget. I'm assuming they've got to be just playing with a smaller budget because that's really money buys speed in NASCAR. There's no doubt about it. I have heard people say that Hendrick is working more on the Chevrolet body for next year while RCR has already kind of shifted their gears to the next gen car. Maybe that's part of a distraction. Maybe they're not focused necessarily on this car because, to be fair, we have this car for 1 more year. It's really not important. I did realize I completely forgot that Austin Dillon got 3 poles this year. I remembered him getting a pole. I did not think it was 3. So clearly they're finding speed at some point in qualifying trim, but it's not translating to the race. That was one thing that if you think about on the season, because you don't think it's not one of the first few things you think about, but when I bring it to your attention, RCR was notorious for qualifying well and then dropping like a rock once the green flag started. I'm talking about they would start on the pole. I think one weekend they would start on the front row together. And by lap 10, I believe both of them were out of the top 10. But Austin, I don't really know how to explain it. He's got to gain some sort of consistency. The team has got to gain some sort of consistency. I completely whiffed on Daniel Hemrick. He ended up just being one rookie of the year, but was nothing what I expected. Austin Dillon, it's not really just all driver, even though driver does play a role. He's got to form some level of consistency. And it seems like there's weeks that they go through spans. If something bad happens for 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, they're going to have to cut that out if they want to make the playoffs in 2020.
Yeah, Austin Dillon, no top fives. First time. This is statistically his worst season in his entire career. Worst points finish of 21st. Only 6 top tens, no top fives. He hasn't had a top 5 finish since Michigan 2018 when Kevin Harvick won. Average finish of 19.5. Only 3 DNFs. So, I mean, he's finishing these races, which I guess is one good thing. But I really don't know what to say for Austin Dillon. I really don't. Because it's like his form. I mean, 2016 was his best season. He didn't win. But he had like 13 top tens. That's the kind of run. Those are the kinds of runs that Austin Dillon needs. And I don't know if that's just RCR that needs to get him better equipment, or I don't know if that's just Austin Dillon that needs to figure out what the hell he's doing as a Cup driver.
It's one of those things where this team has got to find an identity. I feel like they're a team that's just lost and they don't know who they are, because me and you watched Homestead in person, and even though we weren't paying attention to it, if you really think back on it, Austin Dillon ran in the top 10 pretty much all day. He finished 8th. He had a good run. We know he is capable of good runs with a good race car. I don't know if it's him that's inconsistent. I don't know if it's the cars that are inconsistent. But there's weeks that we see that 3 car. I remember tweeting out multiple times this year, look at Austin Dillon running 6th. Look at Austin Dillon running 7th. And I'm talking about for long runs, over half the race. It's not like it was a fluke or they rolled the dice. They just flat out earned their way to the top 10. But he can't do that but every few weeks. And that's what's weird is some weeks they look like RCR's turning it around. They're about to figure these things out. And then the next month you're thinking, what the hell is RCR doing? But anyway, on to our next guy. Another guy making a change. We already talked about his old ride. Now it's time to talk about him. And that is now the driver of the number 37 JTG car, and that is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Everyone's favorite driver.
Everyone's favorite driver. Really thinking about it, and you look at what he did this year. Wow, I didn't even realize it was this bad. 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, had a 20.5 average finish. So Chris Buescher statistically finished 3 spots ahead of him on average for the season. Just again, I know Chris Buescher isn't like the bar, but to see what Chris Buescher did in the JTG car, it compared to where he's running against Roush and RCR and all these guys, that's a good point of reference. So Ricky Stenhouse had, let me see, statistically, this is his worst Cup season since 2015 when he had the same stats in terms of top 5s and top 10s, except his average finish was 24.3. Ricky has you felt like he was coming into his own a couple of years ago in 2017 when he had his 2 wins. This is an odd fact. As I've been to 30 or 40 NASCAR races, I did in fact attend a Ricky Stenhouse Cup Series victory. All right. I was at Daytona in July in 2017 when he won that race.
You witnessed
so that is an oddball. That is an odd history that I will always carry with me. Is I get to see, because I doubt he's ever going to win another Cup race. I got to see one of his 2 Cup wins.
You witnessed greatness.
I witnessed greatness, and Ricky is just. You felt like he was finding his way. He was going to be the answer to RCR, and then he's kind of just fizzled out. He's kind of become a meme. He's kind of a joke around around the social media community, even though he's a very talented race car driver. Even outside of stock car racing, he's very, very accomplished. He just, I don't know if it's bad luck. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if he just got that cloud over him. Ricky Stenhouse just doesn't have it. He just doesn't have the secret sauce. It looks very bad when Ryan Newman goes out his first year in the 6 car, makes the playoffs, almost made the second round. But Ricky Stenhouse can't make the playoffs. He hasn't made the playoffs the last 2 seasons. He's only made the playoffs once ever in his Cup career. That's pretty scary to look at. Ricky's going to probably a step down, like me and you were saying, how Chris Buescher is moving up to a car that can get 4 or 5 more positions. Stenhouse is moving back to a car that traditionally should finish 3 to 5 spots worse. Now, based on what Buescher's doing, he's already getting outran by that car. So, ironically, this almost could be a step up for Ricky Stenhouse, even though it's actually not. I can't knock him if he misses the playoffs again because, again, JTG is not a playoff powerhouse. I don't expect him to make the playoffs. The only chance he's got is he's going to have to win either Talladega or Daytona. I don't even know. I just don't think he can be consistent enough to make the playoffs. So he's going to have to win.
Alberta 4204, shout out to the man. He says, LOL, in 30 years from now, NASCAR opinion is going to be like, I was there for Ricky win number 1 of 2. Oof, my dentures are a hand of Bangkok. Shout out to you, my man.
That's good.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Here's the interesting thing. When Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he still has that little bit of flair of where he could just be competitive. I mean, if you look at it, yeah, he didn't make the playoffs. He has a 20th average finish, 5 DNFs. We know the means. We know, he basically wrecks every other week. I mean, me and you, we were talking about it at Homestead. I literally asked you before the race started, how long until Ricky, that 17 car goes behind the wall?
Yeah. And he didn't.
Yeah, he didn't. But he has an average start of 15.1. That's crucial for stage 1 points. And he led 109 laps. He led more laps than Ryan Newman, but I think Newman only led 16 laps all season. So when Stenhouse wants to, he can turn it on. But he just needs to, I think, we're going to go from one mean driver to another, the driver that we do not speak of when it comes to NASCAR ever again. But I've kind of noticed it. But really, ever since Danica broke up with Ricky, Ricky's just kind of fallen off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I mean, Ricky's always he's never been great, but he kind of has fallen off the face of the earth. I mean, you would think when Danica left, he would just start winning races left and right, but no. Ricky as a driver is what RCR is as a team. Some weeks he looks great. Some weeks you're thinking, what is going on? And I don't know if he's overdrives the car sometimes, which we've seen him make mistakes in those situations where he's overdriving the car. Because at the end of the day, Ricky Stenhouse is a talented race car driver. I just don't know mentally if he has it figured out to be competitive in the Cup Series. I mean, he's a 2-time Xfinity Series champion. He's a hell of a driver on dirt. I just don't know if he has what it takes to mentally be competitive in a Cup car. I think at a time you just draw the line in the sand. He's just not that guy. There's certain guys. Paul Menard was just not that guy. There's just certain guys that aren't the guy. And I don't even mean to compare Stenhouse and Menard. Stenhouse's resume is still way bigger than Paul Menard's. But some guys just aren't it. Ricky Stenhouse is one of those guys. He's just not it. He was able to get 2 Cup wins. Maybe he'll squeeze another one out. I personally think he's done winning races in that term. I'm not saying he's not going to have flashes and flares. I don't think we ever see Ricky in a super competitive car moving forward, even though, and this is your silly season for 2021 or 2022 or 2037, whenever you want to consider this, there was supposedly backroom rumors that Stenhouse was waiting for the 4 car to open up at Stewart-Haas, because people have to remember this. Kevin Harvick is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s agent. You have to remember that. Kevin Harvick and Ricky Stenhouse have a connection because Kevin Harvick Incorporated is the agent to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now, I don't carry any weight with that. A lot of things have to happen. We don't even know if Kevin Harvick's retiring. Kevin Harvick may run another 26 years. Nobody knows. He may run against Keelan. Keelan may win a championship in the same Final Four as his dad. But keep that in mind. I heard that down the road. I have no true of the validity of it. That's just something to throw out there. I think that would be his only shot at getting a big ride. Again, this is 0% confirmed. Don't anybody run to the presses with it. But it was something I'd heard because there is a connection between Stenhouse and Harvick outside of the racetrack. But Stenhouse just isn't that guy. He just wasn't able to figure it out. And at the end of the day, I don't think he ever will get it figured out to a point where he can run for playoffs and championships.
All right. So, yeah, that's our in-depth look on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So let's move on to the next one.
All right. You ready? This is fun because me and you didn't even think about this until about 45 seconds until we went live. Why aren't we covering the rookies? Everybody's talking about them, the rookie. And listen, one of those three guys, if not at two, if not, I'm not going to say all three, but the odds are for sure at least one of these guys is going to make it. There's a high chance at least two of these guys could make it. There's a far chance all three of them could make it. Now, first one I want to start with is Cole Custer. Cole Custer is in the best position. Now, the 95 car is going to be probably even faster than the 41 next year because it's going to be the fifth Gibbs car. There is not going to be any of this, oh, we're an alliance and we care about you, but we're going to not help. It's going to be here's more money, and here's more money. Do what you got to do. Actually, here's not even money. You just give us all the 95 cars. We're going to put your Levine Family Racing sticker on it, but it's really our Joe Gibbs racing car. So Bale is at the end of the day, Bale is going to have the better equipment, but the 95 team is still going to have to get used to being in the position of winning races and that kind of thing. There's still an adjustment period there. But starting with Cole Custer, I think Cole is definitely going to have a chance. Would not be surprised if he misses the playoffs this first year because you got to think, while the cars in Cup are easier to drive potentially than the Xfinity cars, the racing, for one, it's an adjustment no matter what. I mean, you're going from, like as Cole will tell you himself, from racing 8 to 10 guys in Xfinity to racing 25 guys at the Cup level. Nowadays, the racing is so different. You're on throttle the entire time. There's not a ton of tracks with on throttle and off throttle play. That's what these guys are used to. They've got to adjust to pretty much using the air. Everything's aero. That's everything at the Cup Series right now is aero and the package and spoilers and downforce. That's a different style of racing than they've been used to the last few years. They've got to adjust to that. So while I think Cole is in the best spot because we know he's in a good car, I think Tony and them are going to push him to be successful because this could be their first lifer at Stewart-Haas Racing. There's never been a driver that started and finished at Stewart-Haas because Stewart-Haas is still relatively a new team. They've only been around for a decade. Cole has a great shot to make it. I'm not going to predict anybody making it just yet, like I said earlier. Cole is going to just have to be consistent. Top 15s, top 10s when you can. If you somehow get in a position to win, which I don't foresee, great. But top 10s, top 15s, and then he's going to be able to compete for the playoff.
Take a look at Cole Custer's Xfinity Series stats. He was part of the Big Three this year. He was the second most he was the second most consistent driver of the Big Three, but he wasn't the second most consistent all season. But 7 wins, 17 top 5s, 24 top 10s, average finish of 9th, average start of 5.5, and 922 laps led with 4 DNFs, and he finished runner-up in the standings to Tyler Reddick. We'll get to him later. I think the key for Cole Custer, in my opinion, to make it to the playoffs next year in his rookie season, we talked about it earlier. Who is going to be his crew chief? Is it going to be Billy Scott, or is it going to be his Cup Series crew, or is it going to be his Xfinity Series crew chief, Mike Shipley? Because Mike Shipley, he's kind of like what Jason Ratcliffe was for Christopher Bell. You know, Jason Ratcliffe, he was former Cup Series crew chief, and then he went down the Xfinity Series for Christopher Bell. Mike Shipley, he was a Cup Series crew chief a couple of years ago, I think like a decade ago. I saw a video on it by NRF, but he never, he was like he worked with Red Bull Racing, Petty Enterprises, Richard Petty Motorsports when they first started, so he has experience at the Cup level. And people forget he was the crew chief for the 42 car since like 2017 and 2018, the Xfinity Series, and we know that car was. I mean, in 2017, 2018, they were racking off wins like it was nothing. 2018, probably the best car in the Xfinity garage was the 42 car. I mean, Larson, he didn't win any Cup races, but I guarantee you Mike Shipley was the crew chief. He probably would have. So I think it's going to come down to who's going to be the crew chief. If it's Billy Scott, I don't see Cole Custer making it. If Mike Shiplett's the crew chief, they got the chemistry. I think Mike Shiplett is just a better crew chief in general than Billy Scott. I think that I think Cole Custer's chances of making the playoffs, if Mike Shiplett is the crew chief, goes up way higher. And NASCAR 88 says, I think Nemechek will drive the 2 for RCR next year in Xfinity. Hell yeah. Front row Joe to the 2 car.
Well, people got to remember, Nemechek, John Hunter has pretty much signed, not done yet with front row. So people got to remember that. Everybody's been asking me about, could John Hunter Nemechek drive the 48 in this? John Hunter Nemechek, with him signing the front row deal, it's really hard to dig yourself out of that hole without major sponsorship. So just remember that. We've seen a lot of drivers go down that hole, and they usually stay kind of in that realm. So since I know we've been taking up a good amount of time, we'll try to hit through these next few guys a little bit. So the next one we got is Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick, RCR. I think RCR is still, again, they're focused really on that next gen car. I think 2020 is kind of just, we'll see if Tyler can create a difference. We'll see if what we can learn from Tyler. I think Tyler Reddick's really going to be the leader of that team. I mean, Austin Dillon, who's a guy, it's already like Austin Dillon's 5th or 6th Cup season. While you're obviously going to lean on him, Tyler Reddick means a ton to RCR. The guys are excited about him. So watch out for them just to try to learn some things from Tyler, learn his driving style, setup, stuff like that from him next year. I don't expect them to make the playoffs. Tyler is going to struggle in that car at times. It's not going to be his fault. It's just that's not a great car. It's not a great team. I think he will elevate them at times. I think we're going to see some flashes of Tyler Reddick where you look and say, this kid's going to be good. But there's also going to be a lot of times when he kind of blends in like Daniel Hemrick did. So I would foresee them not making the playoffs next year. His only shot is maybe you steal a plate win, or again, use the Ryan Newman method, top 10 it, top 15 it. Maybe you find yourself competing when it comes late to the regular season.
Tyler Reddick's Xfinity stats. He led the points. He's had the points lead in the 2019 Xfinity Series for 30 out of the 33 races that year. So the move to RCR is definitely helping. 6 wins, 24 top 5s, 27 top 10s, average finish to 6.3, average finish to 6, 568 laps led, 3 DNFs, and back-to-back championships. Randall Burnett's the crew chief. That's like the key to, I think, all the rookies is the crew chiefs. I think Randall Burnett, I don't think Tyler Reddick will make the playoffs, but I do think this is interesting. Next year will probably be the most, barring any, Michael McDowell's or, full-time Spire Motorsports drivers winning races out of nowhere. Next year might be the most interesting playoff battle yet. Because you got basically with where drivers are going and with some equipment leveling up, the field just went from 17, 18 drivers can probably have a shot to now maybe more than 20.
For sure. It's going to be interesting to watch. This year was so good because it was probably the most competitive playoff field we've ever had. Everyone deserved to be there. Now, I still don't like 16 drivers making it. I prefer 12. But if you're going to have 16, the right 16 made it. There was nobody that lucked into a win and made it, and they just weren't going to ever be competitive. The right 16 made it, and that's what made it good. And I think, with this package, really the best of the best still win. So we're probably going to see something similar to next year.
Yeah, but as for Tyler Reddick, I don't think he'll make the playoffs, but basically just do what Ryan Newman did and just try to hack off top 10. I mean, in his second Cup start at Kansas, he was competing for the win. Late in that race, he was competing for the win. So Tyler Reddick has somewhat of this. He has a sense of competing for wins now in the Cup Series. Obviously, I don't think he's going to win a race next season, but it wouldn't surprise me because he's like, okay, I've already been put in that position. I finished 9th that day, but I've already somewhat been put in that position. Well, you can't say that for Cole Custer. His 3 Cup starts he was running for Wick Ware Racing, and Christopher Bell hasn't even run a Cup race yet. So I think Tyler Reddick kind of has that edge over them. Tyler Reddick has one thing. He's got that edge over Cole Custer and Christopher Bell, which I think, if not make the playoffs, at least win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, Tyler Reddick, he just has that kind of young, hotshot swagger to him. I mean, and how I can already picture the storyline that Austin Dillon, who has struggled to win races and struggles to just make the playoffs, gets overshadowed by his rookie teammate. So don't want to stay on Reddick too long because I want to get on Bell. But Reddick, I'm so excited about all 3 of these. Reddick is going to be fun to watch because he's going to almost, as a rookie, just his tenacity as a driver is going to show us where that equipment is at moving forward. But getting to our last of 3 rookies, and then I realized we actually skipped a guy. We'll get to who we skipped, and then we'll get to a secret driver at the end that I know you're eager to talk about. The last rookie is none other than Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell may be one of the most talented young drivers, not only in stock car racing, but in the world. He's just that world-renowned and known. Christopher Bell moving obviously to Levine Family Racing, aka Joe Gibbs Racing. Obviously getting extra funding with that big alliance this year. Bell's really stepping into a good spot. I think they've got again. LFR has got to adjust to just being in the routine of being a top-tier team. I know it kind of sounds stupid, but mentally that program has got to get prepared for. We're going from running 15th to running in the top 5, top 10. And we've seen every rookie every year struggle. And Christopher Bell is going to be the same way. He's a dirt guy, just like Larson. This package didn't really fare him well at first. He's going to have to adjust to this same package to where you're just holding it full throttle. That's not Christopher Bell's driving style. So we're going to have to watch out for that. This team can definitely make the playoffs. He could definitely steal a win. If any rookie could steal a win, it would be him. And, again, you run consistent. He has the car to get top 10s and top 15s right off the bat. If he can do that more often than not, he'll be in the playoffs.
Let's take a look at Christopher Bell's Xfinity Series stats. 8 wins most of the year, 20 top 5s, 21 top 10s, average finish in 9.1, average start 5.2, 5 DNFs, 2,005 laps led. I think it's the most laps led and over by a full-time Xfinity driver, and I think since Sam Ard. Or either Sam Ard or Jeff Green, I think. It's been a while. I don't count Kyle Busch. You can't convince me otherwise.
Assuming you're not counting Kyle Busch, because I'm sure Kyle would hold whatever that record would be.
Yeah, probably like 20,000 laps led. But yeah, Christopher Bell, he's like you said, he's got the car to do it. One thing I've always noticed about Christopher Bell, and I was the same way in the rookie season, in his rookie Xfinity season, it was the same way this season, he still kind of lacks a little bit of more consistency. I read off his stats. He has 20 top 5s and 8 wins, but only 21 top 10s. In the round of 8, like before Phoenix, I believe. I think it was Phoenix. No, it wasn't Phoenix. Before his win at Texas, him and Michael Annett were the only drivers with less than 20 top 10s. So Christopher Bell, we know, like, it's no secret, though. Like, when he has to go dominate, he could go dominate. He had, like, 22 stage wins last year. I don't even know how many times he swept the damn stages. But he still kind of lacks a little bit of that consistency. And you can kind of get away with that in the Xfinity Series, especially if you're in a JGR car. But you can't get away with that in the Cup Series. Unless your name is Ryan Blaney. You can't get away with that in the Cup Series.
Yeah.
So.
Started on that.
Yeah. But yeah, like Christopher Bell, Chris. I don't know if it's just a team or like him as a driver. I don't know. Maybe pushes it a little too hard, but he's gonna have to clean it up a little bit. Because, like I said, I mean, like Noah Gragson, Chase Briscoe, Cole Custer, Tyler Wright, all these drivers. I think even John Hunter Nemechek, they have more top 10s than Christopher Bell did last season. So Christopher Bell, he's got to clean up that consistency. I think he can make the playoffs out of the 3, no problem. But I feel like he's going to have those inconsistent runs. He's going to transfer over from Xfinity to Cup. And if he does, I think that's going to hamper him. If he can find a way to clean those inconsistencies up, I think it makes the playoffs no problem. And the only reason I say that is because of Jason Ratcliffe. Like I said, when Christopher Bell was basically – it was always confirmed after DiBenedetto was announced he was getting the boot. But if Christopher Bell would have gotten Mike Wheeler, I'd say that they'd probably be in the same position. Maybe 1 or 2, maybe 2 or 3 more top 10s. But now that Jason Ratcliffe is back at the Cup Series, I think he's making the playoffs. And
remember, and then we'll move on to the next guy. Jason Ratcliffe is no random crew chief. That dude's won Cup.
Yep.
So moving to the guy we accidentally forgot, everybody's favorite guy to talk about, the Twitter heir to the 48 car, which completely tried to point out to people is completely and utterly ridiculous, and that is Mr. Matty DiBenedetto. Now, everybody assumes I hate Matt DiBenedetto. I really like Matt. I love the move to the 21. I think that is the perfect move for him. Such a great move for him. Paul Menard, big props to him for sitting there and saying, hey, why don't you give this guy the ride? People got to remember that. Paul Menard could have easily continued to run NASCAR for 2, 3, 4 more years. He is Menards is one of the biggest reasons the Wood brothers are able to operate like they do. He said, here's the keys, give them to Matt DiBenedetto. But anyways, Matty D definitely had a step up season in 2019. His first year with decent equipment. Almost got his first win at Bristol in August. 3 top 5, 7 top 10s on the year. I'll let you break down the rest of his stats later. But he is a guy who, this is a really good move. But remember, the 21 car, something's weird about that alliance. It reminds me of kind of how the 95 car has been, obviously a little bit better. I don't know if people tell me that the 21 car is built at Penske, but there's definitely a fact that the 21 car is not as fast as the other 3 Penske cars. I think for plate tracks it is, because I think they genuinely do build the plate cars. But a lot of other weeks, it just seems like it's just one or 2 steps behind the other 3 Penske cars. But Matt DiBenedetto, he's a second tier kind of driver in that situation, to where I think this is a great situation. I don't necessarily foresee, again, I like to lay out everything, and the first people I write is who I know is going to make the playoffs. He's not a guy that I'm guaranteeing is going to be in the postseason next year. He's going to have obviously a great opportunity, going to have the best opportunity he's had so far. But he's not an automatic playoff guy. I think he'll run a little bit better than he did this year. The 21 car is not miles better than the 95 was this past year, but it is better. Matt DiBenedetto is, again, we keep referring to Ryan Newman, but Ryan Newman showed consistency works. He's going to have to just be consistent. I mean, this year, Dibby finished 22nd in points. He really wasn't in the conversation like everybody thought he was going to be. He started running better in the summer, but it was kind of too little too late to have the consistency to make it. DiBenedetto next year is going to just flat out have to be consistent. Great move to the 21. We'll see if it pays off for him.
Yeah, I'll read off the rest of the stats. Average finish of 18.3, 5 DNFs, 152 laps led, most of them coming at the Daytona 500 and the Bristol night race. So, yeah, basically, like, Daytona was like his, where he was kind of like put on the map. But then basically from Atlanta to Michigan, the first Michigan race, he was kind of non-existent. It kind of looked like the 95 car was the 95 cars of old. They didn't really do anything impressive. And then Sonoma came around. He finished 4th. Chicago, it was kind of like the one blind spot, like Daytona. He finished his 8th. Kentucky, 16th. 5th, 17th, like that 95 car started running where Bob Levine said that they were going to run, around 15th to 20th. Whereas before, they were running like 25th the same way. So one thing I've noticed about that 95 car, they adjust quickly. They didn't take them an entire season to start running like 20 from 25th to 20. It took them like half a season, and once they got the ball rolling, they kind of stayed in their playing zone. And they did have those flashes, like the road courses, obviously the Bristol night race, even Darlington where he finished 7th that race. So that is one thing about Matt DiBenedetto I will give him credit for. He does run well in the tracks where the driver matters a lot.
So, he does, very much so.
I'm not the biggest fan of Matt DiBenedetto. I mean, if he were to take over the 48, which we'll get to that later, but if he were to take over the 48, I wouldn't really complain. I personally, my top pick for the 48 is Brett Moffitt, but that's just me. I want to see Brett Moffitt.
Don't even get me started on Brett Moffitt. I've heard that float around. We'll save that for a different video. We'll talk about our picks for the 48.
All right, so yeah, like Matt DiBenedetto just do what Ryan Blaney did in the 12th car. He didn't do anything really flashy, but he showed the strength of the 21, and he was consistent. Don't do what Paul Menard did, where I know Paul Menard is your Lord and Savior, so forgive me for saying this, but Paul Menard did that 21 car dirty. After what Ryan Blaney did in that 21 car, in his first 2 seasons, he finished 20th in points. I know, he didn't make the playoffs in his rookie season, but he won a race, and he would have made on points anyway. So, he was very consistent. When Paul Menard got to that 21, he was never in the conversation.
He disrespected them so much that he gave them millions of dollars to stay in operation.
You know what I mean.
Oh, I know what you mean. Menard just wasn't that guy. And listen, DiBenedetto's a better race car driver than Paul Menard. There's no doubt about that. Upgrade for the team, upgrade for DiBenedetto. But he's still got a lot to prove to me. He's worked hard to get to this ride. I hate the way that he was pretty much done dirty by Joe Gibbs and Levine Family Racing. But really, Joe Gibbs, it wasn't even Bob Levine. But he's got a lot to prove this year. By no means is he a playoff lock. He's a guy that you got to watch out for. But I don't necessarily put him in the playoffs just yet. But now, we are down to one final driver. He's really a nobody, honestly, if you think about it. He's somebody you can kind of look over. Definitely not going to be a playoff contender next year. There's really no way he's going to make the playoffs. But that is Mr. 7-time, now going to be retired, Jimmy Johnson.
My boy.
So his boy, Armani's boy.
That's my boy.
Jimmy Johnson, obviously, huge news this week. He's retiring after next season. I actually have a good feeling about Jimmy Johnson in 2020. Maybe it's just me. It probably is blind faith. But Jimmy, who has now been winless since 2017, which is mind-blowing.
Don't remind me.
By the way, everybody that wants to be a hater, let me check one thing real quick. So what I say here isn't actually a lie, even though I'm fairly confident that it is factual. Let me pull it up here just to put a notch in the GOAT conversation. Jeff Gordon never went back-to-back seasons without a win. Anyways, so looking, obviously we all know that Jimmy Johnson is more than capable of making the playoffs. That team, listen, he's got one more season. He's not going to be the Jimmy Johnson of old, but that team slowly got better as the season started. They kind of ended up on a kind of a stale note, but that team was getting faster and faster. You saw them around the top 10 and top 15 again. That team found something, later on in the season. Jimmy had 3 top 5s, 12 top 10s. There's teams that would wish they could have that in the season. And at the end of the year, it seemed like they were starting to gain a little momentum. I know he had some bad luck at Martinsville and Texas to finish off the season. Jimmy, I just have a feeling either Jimmy is going to win next year or he's going to find a way into the playoffs. That's just me. He's going to have to win. And he has the good enough card to point his way in, obviously. We saw William Byron do that this year. Jimmy Johnson is going to – I don't think he misses the playoffs his final season. I just have a really weird, good feeling. I think he's going to win somewhere, just like Gordon found a way. Now, obviously, Jeff Gordon probably sent Matt Kenseth the biggest thank you letter ever for just completely destroying Joey Logano. But Jeff Gordon found victory lane. Obviously, it took some weird circumstances, but Jeff Gordon won in his final season. I think Jimmy wins at some point. It would be really heartbreaking, even for me, a guy that despised Jimmy Johnson for so long.
You hate it.
It would hurt me to not see him win in his last season. So I'm cheering for the 48 next year. I truly think he makes it somehow, some way. Maybe it's just me falling into the emotion. Probably. Knowing Jimmy, he'll get all of us excited and he'll finish 23rd in points. But, we'll see how that goes. But he's either got to win, which we know he can do, or he's got to be consistent, which we know he can do.
So we'll take a minute, talk about my boy.
Oh, hold on. Just to crush your dreams, Jimmy Johnson's average finish was 17.4. Chris Buescher's was 17.5. He only finished a tenth of a position better than Chris Buescher.
My boy has a rough couple years. We don't speak about 2018. We sure as hell don't speak about 2019. Non-existent. You know what? Jimmy Johnson, he retired in 2017. Coming back in 2020 for one last attempt. 2018, 2019, but Noah Gregson was in the 48 those years.
Okay.
So, like you said, they found some speed. They got 4 top 10s. They got 4 top 10s in the playoffs. They finished 11th in Vegas. They had a top 5 run going to Homestead. I know I should have sacrificed them just for a caution, even though we never got the damn caution.
Nope.
They only had 3 finishes. Well, actually, it's a decent amount. They had 3 DNFs: Martinsville, Texas, and Talladega. Talladega, is Talladega. Martinsville, they had some bad luck. In Texas, they had some bad luck. But Texas, if you're going to win anywhere, it's going to be Texas. Both Texas races this year, as horrendous of a season he's had, he was a contender both of those races. I mean, he led how many laps did he lead? He led in the first Texas race. He led 42 laps. He led 40 laps in this Texas race, which, thank God, if he wasn't going to win, I just want him to at least win lead 100-plus laps. He led 131, so I'll take what I can get. But, yeah, Jimmy Johnson, I think he's going to win next year. I don't think Jimmy Johnson is just going to – I can't see Jimmy Johnson going his last season. It's kind of reminded me, like I always say, like Jimmy Johnson, like it's kind of having like a Tony Stewart type of final portion of his career. You know, like the later halves of his – like the last few seasons of Tony Stewart's career, he kind of fell off a cliff. 2014 was his first winless season. 2015 didn't even score a top 5 finish. And he finished abysmal. And 2016 – it wasn't great, but it was an improvement. He got the win at Sonoma. You know, he basically bullied Denny Hamlin to the win, and he made the playoffs. He didn't make it past the round. He didn't really have a good playoff, but he still made it. Jimmy Johnson, I think, is the same way. Obviously, just in a better position. He won winless in 2018. We don't talk about that. He didn't make the playoffs this season. We don't talk about that. And he won winless again. Again, we don't talk about that. But I think Jimmy Johnson, he's going to make the playoffs. I think he's going to win. I think he's going to win multiple races again. In fact, I'll give you guys a sneak peek of my early-ass 2020 race series predictions. I know this is the biased Jimmy Johnson fan in me, because after Jimmy Johnson, I literally have no one to root for in 2021. Jimmy Johnson wins 4 races and makes the Final 4.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
I'm pulling all my eggs in the basket.
Are you going to fly out to Phoenix if he makes it?
You're goddamn right I am.
I'm
going to be in Phoenix. I told him, hey, I'm coming over in November.
I'm going to be sitting at the house. Jimmy's just an iconic driver. Iconic drivers find a way to win in their final year. Really, the only big name was Dale Jr. And racing-wise,
okay, that we don't talk about.
But racing-wise, Dale Jr., I don't necessarily consider, in terms of statistics, iconic. Overall story of NASCAR, obviously, he plays such a big role in it. But, you know, Junior's been the only one to not win. Gordon found a way. Stewart found a way. Jimmy will find a way. I think, you know, he finds a way at some point, and I'm hoping he finds a way. I'd hate to see him go winless.
NASCAR 88. Michael McDowell to the 48 in 2021.
God, Michael McDowell shouldn't even be to the 33 or to the 34. Excuse me. God.
Which we learned.
Think about this, and then we can leave this for the night. Everybody that's begging to have Matt DiBenedetto in the 48, you want Matt DiBenedetto in the 48 when Chris Buescher had a better average finish in a slower car. Think about that.
I still want Brett Moffitt in the 48.
God, we're not starting it. Brett Moffitt needs to go to the Xfinity Series for a while before he makes that jump. Obviously, he's got some cut start.
He beat DiBenedetto for Rookie of the Year.
It's not hard to beat DiBenedetto for Rookie of the Year when he was with BK Racing. He was with BK Racing.
I don't think Brett Moffitt read the entire schedule. I think he was with BK Racing too.
That wasn't an inflated stat.
Brett Moffitt, the most underrated driver in NASCAR. Changed my mind.
He actually is in that category. But anyways, that's all I got to say for the night. That's what these guys got to do to make the playoffs for 2020. It's going to be interesting because one or two of these names is bound to make the playoffs. It'll be interesting to see who does it. You got any last words?
If you had to put your money on all the drivers that we mentioned, 2 or 3 of them, to make the playoffs, who would you pick?
So I'm going to pick a rookie and then a regular driver, like a veteran. So that's how you should do that too. So if I'm putting money on a rookie, I'm going to say Christopher Bell out of the rookies. And of the veterans, I'm going to say Chris Buescher. Actually, Jimmy Johnson. So Jimmy Johnson, I think, is going to make it somehow. My mindset is at Jimmy. Other than Jimmy, Chris Buescher.
All right. So we basically already confirmed Jimmy. I'm going to confirm Jimmy no matter what. So assuming Jimmy Johnson's already a lock, hopefully he already tied Jeff Gordon by then.
No.
If that happens, I'm just going to laugh. I'm just going to text you and be like, hey, I'll help you find the tattoo parlor.
Sure. Listen, if he gets 11 wins next year, I'm more than happy to get the tattoo of it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Cole Custer. And you know what? I'll go on the burrito bandwagon. Matt Benedetto puts the Wood Brothers back in the playoffs.
I bet you are riding the heir to the 48th throne. Anyways, I'm getting out of here for the night. I appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate everybody just dealing with whatever Armani's going to predict for next year.
I got a lot of predictions.
Well, good. I can't wait till next year. By the way, since this is our last show, I know me and Armani are probably going to have some talks during the off season. Try to buckle down on this thing. Try to do it, make it more consistent. Maybe even try to find some tricks, make it a little more professional, make a little better environment. Maybe, hopefully, I'm going to be having my show, so hopefully I'll have some sort of studio set up.
Show.
Exactly. I'll be the Opie show. We'll talk about it more during the off season. But we do appreciate everybody tuning in, and at least, we know it's a startup. We know there's not a ton of people out there that we're necessarily watching now, but the goal is to keep growing that. You got to start somewhere. We've started somewhere. Obviously, we swear by 30 minutes, and we always end up going to an hour. We'll work on that for next year. But I at least appreciate everybody joining us over the last really 8-9 weeks for the playoffs. NASCAR by the numbers. We'll try to tweak some things, see what we're looking like for next year. But I know me and Armani hopefully have some big plans for 2020.
All right. So, yeah, thank you for tuning into this. We'll call it season 1 of NASCAR by the numbers. Take a look at the playoffs or most of the playoff races, all that good stuff. Sorry we couldn't get the video down at Homestead. Blame the trash internet for it. But, yeah, we'll see you guys either in the offseason or if not, we'll see you in 2020. Take care, folks.
See ya.